Guys, welcome to the BRIT Asia podcast. Now, the podcast is always about real conversations with real people, real artists, and asking those questions that, not everyone wants to ask. And it's important that we give these artists a voice, because the more you suppress a voice, the more stories get changed, twisted, and the truth will never come out. But anyway, speaking of that, I got one of the biggest kind of DJs in the Punjabi UK scene from the late 90s to the 2000s period. And you know what? He disappeared. And we're going to find out why he didn't disappear, what happened, and what's next. And we're joined by Stin. DJ Stin, what's going on, bro?
Well, go on, Diddy. You good?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good, man. Good.
But first, thank you for coming down and speaking to us. I know it's been, a while.
That's it, man. It's good to be like BRIT Asia, isn't it? It's like I didn't really do anything like media-wise back in the day.
Yeah.
Right. So apart from just Bhangra, but it's good. It's good to be here, man. Before I start, can I just say two things? Right. First and foremost, right, is okay. Praise always to the Almighty. Whatever name you want to basically call them by, everything is theirs. Anything that happens in my life, anything that's happened up until this point, right, whether it's been good or bad, has been a blessing, right? So I've always got to say that first and foremost. And the second thing, I just want to say, give props, right, to brothers that have gone in the last couple of years, right, who have meant something to me, right, on a personal level, right? So Balwinder Safri, right, is okay. I had a good relationship with Safri since I was a kid. Right, exactly. A really, really sad loss to the whole of the game. Inda from Twin Beats, Sounds of Punjab, right? He was a producer that was coming up, right? He was like a little brother to me, man. A really, really sad loss, man. Gone during COVID and stuff. You've got Jindi Ji, right? Who was from DSI, right? Passed away last year as well. At a young age. It's like, his voice was heard. No one ever knew who he actually was, right? He didn't know the story, man. A really, really good guy. And then one of my biggest influences, you big me up as being one of the biggest DJs of that era. There's a guy called Critical Digital from my hometown in Leicester, who was my inspiration, right? And that brother passed away as well recently. So as far as I'm concerned, I've got to give props to all of our brothers that have gone. And their legacies live on through the music that they've done. And as far as I'm concerned, right, some of the things that I've been able to do, right, has been off the back of the love and support that they've given me, and most of our wider industry has given me as well. So props to everyone who's passed. The art always comes first, and we're blessed to have people like that have given us such great art.
You kind of nail on the head. And the first question I'm going to ask, right, is legacies. We ain't doing enough to protect legacies of any artist. And when an artist passes away, it's too late. You're never going to hear it from that artist, that kind of mouth of, this is what happened, this is how we started, this is our journey, this is what we achieved. Why are we lacking? And it's like, there's enough Asian media platforms out there. You can't just point a finger and be like, yo, BRIT Asia isn't doing this, BRIT Asia isn't doing that, etc. There's enough media platforms out there, but no one's doing anything to protect their legacies. And sorry, just to interrupt, right? You look at RDB, as big as they were, that legacy has not been protected, in my opinion.
No, yeah, and you know what? That's because we're living in a throwaway age.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Everything needs to be quick, right? Yeah. Exactly. Everything is like short shot, snap here, there, and the other, right? And that's what's working, right? So when you call me down here to say, and I'm mad respect to you, man. Because I'm a ghost. I'm not around. I'm not in the game anymore to that extent, right? And considering that I don't do videos, the last video that you saw from me from 2002 was Bangladesh, right? But here I am on a visual channel, right, where you want to talk to me about stuff that I've done, but yet what I'm known for is music, right? And I produce music, and the platforms that play music, right, won't give time a day to anything that hasn't got the hype of social media, right? So when you look at that, the whole game has changed, right? But you're right, we've got so many outlets, right, where people could be going back and speaking to the legends of this game, right? It's okay, when's the last time, right? Come on, someone sat down and spoke to Balweer Pachungi or A.S. Kang, right, and gone through their journeys, their stories, right? Hira, right? Apna Sangeet, right? Premi, right? Shaba, right? All of those old school people, right? The end of the day, ਆਪਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਸਿਰ ਤੇ ਖੜੇ ਆ Right, we don't exist if they didn't exist. Right, we would have been doing totally different things. They were our inspirations. Right, so we've got to give flowers, right, to everyone in the game who has preceded us, right, and we've got to give respect to them, right. So you know what, if that's what your mission is and that's what you're going to be doing, I think that that's the best thing that can happen in this game. Document those stories, right. We're in an age, in a digital age, right, where it can be done. So you're right, why isn't it, right? And I'd encourage anyone, right? So obviously, you know, what you're doing, Tej, and what everyone's doing here at BRIT Asia, you're trying to get those stories out. That's excellent, right? It shouldn't just be on your heads. It should be on everyone's responsibility, right? To make sure that everyone is celebrated, that art is celebrated, right? Sometimes we don't get on with people, whatever, innit? Tiga, that's not a problem, innit? They're personal things, but we've got to put the art first. We've got to put the colour first. Because without that colour, right, it's like I said, none of us are here. Right, we're just average people on the street, right, who are doing what they're doing. I'm an average person, Tej. Right, it's okay, you know, I don't see myself as being someone who's huge, but I've got stories to tell, right? And there's every piece of music that I've created, there's a story behind it. And there's some really funny ones, right? But more than that, there's relationships, right, of how you get into this game, right? When you're a 15-year-old kid in Leicester, it shouldn't have ever happened. I wasn't in Birmingham. I wasn't in London, even though everyone from Birmingham thinks I'm from here. Everyone from Southall, for some reason, thinks I'm from Southall, right? But it shouldn't have happened. But music did that. And it was me being a fan of all of the greats in this country and the greats in India, right, that drove me to, right, that was my passion. You get into that, you've got to celebrate it. And all of the artists in this country, right, I've got stories with all the old school bands, right? And this is before I came into music. This is me as a fan, right? So when you've got the passion for the scene, you want to see the scene celebrated, because I think that there's a whole generation of people coming out now, artists coming out now who are youngers, right, who can learn a lot from what the elders did, passed on to us, and what we can help then obviously pass on to the future as well.
But do you think there's like a kind of clash between, say, okay, let's look at kind of the band in the 80s and 90s. You're going to get kind of artists now being like, why are you always focusing on them and not us? And then when you're talking about artists now, if you kind of look at kind of the UK, kind of what the UK is producing in terms of artists, etc. Yeah, you've got some good kind of gems coming up, but you've also got a lot of gems that think they're better than what they are. Right? So do you think that's what's tarnishing kind of the infrastructure in the UK? Because it's so easy to enter the game, it's so easy to buy views, it's so easy to pay a PR company. There's the award shows that have no kind of, like, you know, they're not reputable. Somebody gives you the best album, best single, and it's like, I've never heard the single, it never charted, it's never kind of, you know, if you got best single of the year, I expect you to have X amount of shows per year. If you only have one show and you're picking up an award for best artist of the year and best single, there's something not right in our scene, right?
You know, you ever heard of Crew 172 in Chandigarh, yeah? Right, so you know what, like, they put something on their socials and they were just talking about the tracks that they've got that have come out, right? Really good quality stuff, right? Is okay, you know, and it was like, but they don't get the love, right? They don't get the streams that they deserve, right? They haven't got the exposure, right, on media outlets that they deserve. And these two are really talented brothers, right, who have, not only with Punjabi music but with hip hop as well, right? Okay, they hold their own. And I sent another message, right? And I said to him, look, okay, you know what? Credit to you, because you're doing what you're doing and you're doing it with passion, right? Anyone can go viral. Not everyone can make good music, right? That's what it is. It's like when you're making quality music, and the people who make quality music, right, aren't the ones who will be shouting and trying to basically get that exposure and try to get those likes and those hits. Right, they're not doing that. They're doing it for what the music is. And there are some really phenomenal, talented, not only singers, right, or rappers, right, but musicians in this country, right, who are young, right, who've got skills, and they've been like, they're just really working on those skills for years, right? They won't get the exposure, like you said, because someone who can get a social media following, go viral, right, will be in your face, right, 24/7, and all of a sudden that's basically, for them, they're now an artist. When I started, right, the studio time was expensive, And remember, as a 15-year-old kid, right, it's okay, here I am, I've got all of these ideas in my head, right? I've just bought my turntables. I'm learning my craft on turntables, right? It's okay, and they were belt drive turntables, not even direct drive. So if you're a DJ these days and like you're on CDJs, you don't even do that anymore, right? It's like there's like, you know, you can push buttons.
Yeah.
But when you had something, right, where the timing could slip at any point in time and you've got to learn to beat match, that was the graft. After every day after school, coming home as a 15-year-old kid, right, it's like putting a table in front of a hi-fi, sticking up, right, 2 turntables and a mixer that I bought from an advert in the back of Hip Hop Connection magazine, right? Pulling out records, right, which were, I bought 90s records, I bought like, because it was the 90s, isn't it? But Bhangra records, I bought some hip hop records, I had like, you know, my old school records from my parents, right? Learning how to mix, and that was it. I was like in that zone, right? I had to build that up, right? The first time I ever stepped in a studio is only because like one of my friends from school, and we went to a pretty much all white school, right? And he'd moved down from Cambridge, and he's like, oh, I know someone who's got a studio, right? Do you want to see if you can, like, you know, cut a dub? I'm like, yeah, go on. Right, who is it? And he goes, yeah, it's a guy called Raj, right? I'm like, okay, cool, right, not a problem. Like, hooking up on it, right? So he gave me his number. I called him. I'm like, Raj, is Raj? Yeah. Well, it's okay, you know, like, I want to get some studio time. Like, yeah, cool, no problem. Right, just come down to my studio. This is how much it's going to cost, right? So I went down to this guy's studio. Who was Raj?
Punjabi MC.
Yeah?
Yeah.
A school friend.
Yeah.
Right? The Hindu school friend who didn't know nothing about Bhangra, right? Basically introduced me to Punjabi MC, right? It's like, you know, that's the plate. That's the plate from up there, isn't it? And like, you know, when I went into the studio that day, all we did is we did a Lakno the remix. Right? He was engineering it for me. I was basically pulling out my records. Okay, Lakno, let's get that down. This, that, and the other. And what Red saw in me at that time is, okay, you know what? Hold on. And by this time, I'm 16 years old, right? So there's a 16-year-old kid. He's just got dropped off by his, like, you know, by his like brother, right, to come to the studio. He's done this, right? He's like, you know what? Look, do you want to work with me? Right? What a gift.
Yeah.
What a gift, right? It's like, you know what? So it's those connections that, you know, those people out there who were willing to help you to get in the game, right? Now, if we fast forward to now, so if that took me that graft to get into a studio and get that, and I was lucky, right? Because if that wouldn't have happened, I would have had to raise capital, find a studio, find an engineer, get that done. And in the meantime, right, I'm basically trying to study like sound engineering and stuff as well, right? Exactly. I'm trying to get into learning how to do it myself, right? So I've got a kind of fast track there, right? But these days, the amount of software that's out there, and it's a gift and a curse, right? Because you can become an artist really, really quickly. You can create stuff like, you know what, even AI now, right, is going to make it even easier to do that.
The chat that GBT where you know
exactly, right? Exactly. You know, in my professional life last night, we just did a webinar, right? Launching Chat GPT into one of the products that I work on, isn't it? Right, so it's the game's changing, everything's changing, right? And what's happening is when you've not had to do that graft, and you're getting this on a plate now, right? Your ego will basically come into it, right? And that's the thing, is when that hits, is when you're thinking that you're bigger than someone else because you've got the numbers, right? And no matter what, right? It's like you can be the most humble person in the world, right? But right? You're then going to start thinking that you're bigger than you are. And everyone who attempts to make music, right, does it because they want to make music. Yeah, first and foremost. It's after that everyone starts to think, okay, you know what, right, hold on. How do I make my image? How do I build my brand out of that? Right? And that's where the problems start coming in, because you start to then take it to self, right? The I come before the art. And that's the one thing, right, is the biggest mistake anyone can ever think, is when you put yourself before the art.
That's brought me on nicely to the next question, right? Let's talk about the peak in the UK. I call it the peak because the band era had their peak. Then things kind of waffled down. Then this millennium period, we've kind of come back. There was a lot of labels. Like you look at now, there's hardly any labels out there, right? But you had literally Movie Box, you had Envy, you had High Tech, you had, you know, the Soundpipe came later on. There was a lot of labels. one of the biggest labels was Envy. You had one of the biggest rosters. There was yourself, there's DJ Sanj, Little Satch, there was Zeus, DIP for kids that know. There was a Rouge. You were all on this one mod. Like you had the death row of basically Punjabi music. And I'd call Movie Box Bad Boy. Right? They were like the PD. That's kind of embarrassing, right?
Yeah.
They were the Bad Boy. They're Jazzy, Shinda, etc. But you guys had the UK kind of this next generation, bar the American boys that came in. Was there ego in that camp? Because, like, okay, there was success. Like, everyone knows the success. We'll talk about success later on. But there's some big names. Was there ego in that camp?
Let's rewind it right back to the beginning of coming into that, innit? Right. So remember, Envy, Roma.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So Pritpal, GT was like he owned Roma.
Yeah.
Right. Envy was started. Well, Viv was working with Pritpal as well, but then Pritpal's son Raj and Viv basically started Envy because what they wanted to do, right, was like, you know what, really make something which was for kids that were born here.
New generation.
Yeah, that's it, right? So you know what, where you had, like, and remember Roma, the killer artists on there, right? Sufri was on there, right? AS Gang was on there, right? It's okay. Apna Sangeet had done stuff right through Roma. They were like the stalwarts. You get it, right? So it was there. So when Envy came about, it was that, okay, we're going to do something which is young and hip, yeah, right? And that was kind of coming out of everything that was being done in Roma anyway at that time, right? Because if you think about it, right, it's okay, Skills Inc.
Yeah.
Right. You know what? Those guys had just basically just done, you know, the dark stuff and the do or die stuff there, innit? Right. So it was progressively changing. So when they basically put together Envy, it was a magazine first, right? And the music, right, was supplementary to what was going to go with the magazine. When they started signing artists, right, DIP was signed to Envy, right, as probably as their first artist, right? In Case, right, he was there as well, right? When I came into the whole of that, it was a case of I was DJing, right? There was a promoter called Milton, right? Dance Asia, right? I was doing a lot of gigs with him, right? He basically mentioned my name to the guys at Envy, right? Davi from DIP, right, was kind of like a friend of mine before that, and we'd been gigging at all these gigs, and they'd basically, you know what, right? There's a kid, right? Yeah. Like, come in, and I'd already released something in Canada before that, right? So there's an album called 100% Dissy,
Okay.
right? So that's the one where so Mr. Loverman and Gideli Running, right? So you know what, I'd done that again. I'd done that in PMC Studio. P's got his version of it, right? There's a version that I've done, and there's other tracks on that, right? So that I'd already done that, and I was looking for a label. Yeah, spoken to other labels, and you know some of this, what they were saying was like, okay, nah, ridiculous, man. I need to sound my life way, right? You can allow that, right? So when I went into Envy, it was like a family. Honestly, it was like a family, right? I'd signed with Envy, but I'm working on AS Gang's album, right, for Roma.
Yeah.
So you get it. So there was no split, right? It was a case of, right, okay, you know what? It was like a Pritpal was like, he was your uncle, right? I remember when, like, you know, think about it. Again, I'm now into like going into my late teens, early 20s, and I'm signing with Envy, right? And I'm producing for AS Gang. How did that happen?
Yeah.
You get it, Janji the Hujja, right? That era, KS Narula, you've just had him doing something with Atul Sharma, right? Shinda has done like his albums, right? And all of a sudden, right, it's okay, you know what? I'm being allowed to do with DIP. So you get it, right? There was in those early days, right? In the whole game, there wasn't that attitude that you'd see. There wasn't egos, right? We were all working on these projects, right? And we were all basically trying to lift each other, right? Some of the best memories that I've got, right, is okay, basically recording that album, right? Because you've got someone of the caliber of AS Gang on vocals, and you've got backing vocals from DIP, right? People, how's that going to work, right? It's okay, you can have a football chorus, right? Do you think? But you know, we made it work. And like AS Gang, right? He gave us the opportunity, right, to do that. Why? Because we were in that environment, in this label, right, in this family that wanted everyone to help each other out. right? It was beautiful.
Question, DIP. So people, obviously the younger viewers don't know, DIP was like the first kind of male
band.
Was it a trio or was it 4 of them first?
4 of them.
There's 4 of them in the trio, right?
Yeah.
Is it true that there was an issue between them and B21?
No.
In terms of, there was a song, was it Darshan? That DIP released their version. And then B21 were like, hold on, what's happening here? And then they really said, because there's always that kind of, you know, this kind of, Movie Box have B21 and we have DIP. What happened to that?
None of that, bro. None of that, right? Okay, so I was booked into Planet Studios, right? Because it was busy at the Roma Studios at the top of Soho Road, right? So Viv was like, okay, you know what? Go down to Planet, right, and just basically start on what would have been the cover up.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm walking in, and Buddha had the session booked just before. Yeah, right. So he's like, you know, so as I'm coming in, right, he's still there. He's still working on what he's working on. Right now, again, going back, even with Buddha, right, it's okay. You know what? Like, really good relationship with Buddha, right? I've been a fan of Buddha Jagbal, right, from day. Yeah, as a producer and as a banda, right? It's okay. You know what? He's a top guy. Top guy in this game, right? Is okay, you know what? That guy is one of the most talented, right? And one of the most genuine people out there, isn't it? Right? So there was never anything on stage or anything like B21 played at my wedding. Yeah. Right, it was one of their first ever wedding gigs, right? DIP are my boys, right? I'm never gonna put those two in the same building, right? It's okay. If there's anything, there was nothing, honestly. There was none of that. Everyone was just getting on with it. So as I've walked into Planet Studios that day, right? You've got Buddha working on Darshan. I'd just done Darshan for DIP. Yeah, and we'd done it in a Kawali style, innit? Right? Because at the end of the day, that's the kind of like vibe that I wanted to go for. Never thought that we can make this into a hardcore Bhangra track, right? Like Buddha had done. And so he just recorded the percussion, right? So obviously he's playing it, right? And I'm like, Buddha, serious? You've just done Darshan, right? And he goes, yeah. I'm going, just done it for DIP, right? Buddha just laughs at me, innit? And he goes, hey, my dad's track ain't your dad's track, do you get? Right? And you know what? That's literally what it is, man. You know what I mean? It's like we weren't gonna pull it, right? He wasn't gonna pull it. Chino wasn't gonna pull the version that he just basically did, right, on one of his albums, right? So there was no issues, man. It was all love.
But who do you think kind of made these kind of like rumors up? Because realistically, I remember like times are different then, right? Literally, there was only like 2 or 3 message boards back then.
No,
a few websites. And you know which message board I'm on about, right? But how did these websites and these message boards know that these things are happening? Like, obviously now down the line, people saying, yeah, artists just go on there, make, you know, fake accounts and comment, record labels, etc. But was there a lot of jealousy in the scene?
Oh, there was a lot. I wouldn't say it came from the scene though.
Yeah.
Right, there may have been. Right, end of the day, right, is okay, look, right, I can't be naive and say that people didn't want to say things, innit, and want to Karshi come out. That's the same now. Right, happens now, right? Look, socials, right, you know, people will get triggered on Twitter, right, for over a little comment, which isn't what it is. Yeah. And so that was always there. But yeah, genuinely, right, there were times, because like there's a lot of people that said a lot of stuff. Yeah. Right, a lot of people said a lot of stuff about different artists, and just trying to basically play people off each other, right? But what if when you're part of it and you're seeing what's happening, right, you know that it's not true, right? Because we were all gigging, you'd turn up to a gig and someone else would be there, right? Have you ever seen a kickoff at a gig? You ever seen 2 bands or 2 DJs, right, basically going to blows, right? There was a whole period, right, where people thought, right, that me and PMC, right, were arch enemies. We didn't talk, granted, right, we just basically drifted apart, right, in whatever happened. And there were, like, in that situation, there were people that, like, did a bit of Karshi Kamaying between me and Raj, right? But when you used to see, like, me and Raj at the same gig, right, you'd never see us basically going up to each other, right, squaring up or whatever, right? End of the day, PMC is my first production to start. I would never do that. I've never said a bad word about PMC. So where were people basically getting this stuff from, right? When they're feeding it, right? It's okay, Stin said this, or Stin said that, or P said this, P said that, right? Because when we're meeting, it's like, Brad, you good? Yeah, I'm good, Stin. How is things with you? All right, man, all good, right? Yeah, I'm loving what you're doing. I'm loving what you're doing, right? You get it? And we're close. You know, we're brothers, man. I mean, we went through stuff outside of music, and this is with a lot of people, Ted, right? Outside of music, my relationships are not because, like, first and foremost, I was a fan of people. Second, when I got to know people, right, exactly, you know what, I connected with them on a level which was not, what am I going to get from this? But listen, right, exactly, you know what, right, I really, like, love what you're doing, right? Anything that I can do to help in any kind of way, right? And these were bigger people than me, so it weren't, like, really massive amounts of help that you can give people, but they were the relationships we were building, right? At 18 years old, why am I driving from Leicester to pick Jazzy up from the airport to take him to Holyhead Road in Birmingham, right? Umbi would, like, call from time to time, right? Exactly, you know, I can't go to work, can you pick Jazzy up, right? So I'd go, you know what? And those relationships, right, weren't for, I never thought that, okay, you know what, listen, if I'm going to pay Jazzy V a prize, like, do you think that, like, he'll be able to get me a deal? Nah, none of that.
Right.
None of that, man. It's like, you know what, it's because I respected, like, him as an artist. I respected him as a brother, right? Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it, right? Like, end of the day, 18-year-old kid, right? Exactly. You're not really going to spend all that money doing that kind of stuff, innit? Right? So you build these relationships, and when people, like, in this game, right, have, like, people won't have issues,
Yeah.
regardless, right? I've had issues with certain people in the game, innit, right? For whatever reason it is, but it's never animosity, right? And it's never that deep that you're really going to go in and burn bridges with people. Because at the end of the day, right, what are you? You're a human being. This color, like I said, right, put God first.
Yeah.
Yeah. This color has been given to you by the Almighty. It can be taken away in a moment.
Of course.
Yeah. Right. So why should I, or anyone else for that matter, right, basically give it large, right, when end of the day, right, exactly, it's all given by the Almighty. And when you start to, like, when you get older, you understand that, right? When you're younger, right, it's okay, people may be hotheads, but end of the day, right, within all of the camps that I've worked in, right, and with all of the artists that I've ever interacted with, right, it's okay, you know, I haven't got any ill feeling towards anyone, right? And I don't think anyone's got any ill feelings towards me. If they have, right, by all means, man, listen, you know what, you can address it. I know that I'm not, I'm a bit of a ghost, right? But you know, it's never a big thing.
So when the MB camp, obviously, there was a lot of kind of different artists out there.
Mm-hmm.
You had, for example, Sanj, the American, and I call them the American Most Wanted crew. They were putting out literally an album every other month. Whether it was him, whether it was under Satch's brand, whether it was America's Most Wanted, there was a lot coming from him.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that kind of overshadowed a lot of other artists. And that's just my opinion.
What, in MV?
Yeah, because obviously when it comes to album releases, these guys are releasing, say, I don't know, in a year, say 6 albums.
Yeah.
And everybody else is releasing 1 album. You know, was that having an impact on other artists that, you know, this guy's releasing 6 and we're releasing 1?
No.
He's getting more of a push, then we're getting more of a push. Or was it, you know, who dictated like how many albums you can drop a year on MV?
No one dictated anything like that.
Yeah.
What you've got to understand is there's people who like, we were working, right? You know, I had a job,
Yeah.
right? And then I was gigging, right? We had, and with Envy, right, it's actually one of the craziest things, right? So if you look at DIP, there was me, Case would come with us, and then you'd have, like, later on the DSI lads as well,
Yeah.
right? And then there was another set of, like, people that used to be around us as well who were getting into the game, right? So Project 9 lads, right? Exactly. We had a whole load of dollies, right? We had dancers, right? So we were going out doing mainly, literally every weekend, right? We would be together, right? Exactly, in some part of the country doing some kind of event during the weeks, right? Exactly, we were gigging hard. Do you get it, right? So when you're doing that much amount of stuff, right, it's okay, how can you dedicate that much time to the studio if you're working as well?
Yeah.
You get it? Now, Sanj is a beast. When it comes to working in the studio, he's a beast, right? It's like he can churn out, right, music like quick, right? Because that's all that he was concentrating on, and that's all he was doing. So no one ever thought that, okay, you know what, yeah, you're putting, like, him in front of me, or you're putting him in front of me. Remember, like, okay, so like I said, Case was there before I joined Envy. DIP were there. We were working on DIP's album as one of the first things that I did when we got to Envy, right? Zeus came afterwards. Sanj came afterwards. Do you get it? Right now, for us, it was never a case of, oh, right, yo, you got a new artist, oh, like that. With other labels, right, I know that some of that stuff did happen, right, because there were artists, right, who felt that they'd been put on a shelf, yeah? With us, because we're so busy and we're together every single weekend or during the week, right, doing gigs, we're in and around each other, right? And it's like, okay, the albums were evolving, right? So when I'm working on stuff, right, it's evolving. The lads are hearing what we're working on, right? It's like, okay, you know what, yeah, that's cool, right? What, you know, and when we're working on their albums and stuff, right, it's the collaborations that we had probably in the back of the van, right on the way to a mill, right, when we're talking about some tracks. There's a track that's unreleased from DIP. We called it Above the Shop Bollian, right? Because we were all just sitting in the shop, right, doing something totally different, right? And we just started writing these funny bollian, and the next minute, right, we're recording it, right? So it was never a case of, yeah, that person's coming in front of you, that person's coming in front of you, right? We were there to help. It was the whole collective. It's a brotherhood, like I said. Do you get it? Right? When we used to go to gigs, any time that we'd go on stage, remember the crew mentality in Bhangra came from us. Yeah? When we would go to a gig and we're all about to go on stage, and it's like I said, right, you know what, 15, 20 man that are going deep on stage, right? We would do another dance first. We'd get everyone together. Right? Then stage the matha teke, right? Because end of the day, right, this is what we've been gifted, and then we're going to go and do what we do. You're never going to do that if you've got an attitude. You're never going to do that, right, if you've got an ego, right? Because you think that you're above everyone. Nah, we're all we saw each other as brothers, as the core camp in Envy, right? Obviously, Sanj, with everything that he was doing with the North American lot, he had that collective already built. So that I wouldn't say that was part of what we had here.
Yeah.
Right? Zeus would be with us at times, but then Zeus would be doing his own thing, isn't it? Right? So think about it like Wu-Tang Clan.
Right. Yeah.
You get it? Right? Zeus is like meth. You get it? Right? Exactly. You know what? Right? Is there any animosity, right, between, like, you know what, Raekwon and meth? Nah, they're brothers. That's what we are. We're brothers.
Yeah.
Right, we always, like, you know, I spoke to Zeus last night. I'm going to go and see him later on today. Right? We are brothers. Take the music out of it. I'll message everyone.
Yeah.
And not even within the Envy camp. I'll message people randomly, right, out of the artists.
Why do you think so many artists from Envy, right, there was a fraction of artists that actually made a successful music career. But then there was those that just didn't quite lift off. And in my opinion, like DIP, for example, you know, for what they were, it just didn't work, in my opinion. It started off as a kind of concept which was kind of mirroring mainstream of this, like the first kind of boy band.
Yeah.
But it just never lifted off.
Well, like, why say that?
Yeah.
You say that.
Yeah.
Right? But at their peak, I don't think that there was anyone as big as DIP. Right? Think about it, like I said, every single weekend, when we would do Millie, right, it was off the back of DIP.
Yeah, but what I mean by lifting, like sustaining, it's, you ask like the generation now.
Yeah.
You know, so you throw these names at them, they wouldn't have a clue.
Yeah. That's, again, it's just the shift, isn't it? Right? It's like when you're not releasing and you're not active. I saw today. Yeah. There's probably people watching this, right? I said, okay, you know what, right? Who's this Santa Claus looking geezer, right? Sitting on screen, right? They won't know.
Yeah.
But the ones who know. You get it, right? And it's not like, for all different reasons. For DIP, it was a case of they've cracked India. They were huge in India. They've toured internationally, right? Room 18, when that came out, Lakada Halara, right? Killer track, right? You know what, killed it, right? That was the last album that they did, right? Now after that, right? Bassie's gone over to Australia, right? Davi and Talia left here, right? The original member Sanj that was with them as well, his son, Vishal Mahay, right?
What's that son?
That's Sanj's son, bro. That's Sanj's son.
But that was the last stuff for AJ. Get that quiet.
See, and this is the thing, right? Is okay, when I talk to you about, okay, you know what, people have got talent, and they're really refining their craft. You go and find me, right, a musician,
like him,
as rounded as Vishal.
For those that don't know, go to our Instagram page because you've seen him with Keith Makan and him and Sunday. You need a bad boy live session with those guys.
Nephew, right? That's nephew, bro. That's the next generation. That's what makes me happy, is seeing. That's what I want to see. I want to see, like, you know what, that there's a whole generation, right, that have basically got to come up. And I'm not talking like nepotism, right? Exactly. You know what I'm saying that because he's Sanjay's son, isn't it? Right? Because I respect, like, you know, I respect him as a musician for what he is. My son's producing music now, right? You get it, right? And I've never said to him that you've got to get into this, but it's a passion, and because they've been in and around it. Look at Tumsy's son, right? You know what? Great producer, right? It's like, you know what? So you've got all of these, like, we're passing it on to those generations anyway, right? Getting back to that point. So when you're not releasing something, right, that's when your relevancy goes, right? But I guarantee you, right, is it like they're still getting streams? Those songs are still getting streams. They're still quality tracks. They still stand up to date.
Yeah.
Do you get it? Right. So it's when you stop releasing, you're only going to be judged with what you've released in the past. And to get back into it, right? Like I said, the game has changed. I've released music, right, recently, but I won't get radio play, right, because it's not gone viral.
That's the next point we'll talk about, is radio. Okay, so like, you know, you with Envy, everyone's kind of making their transitions. You then made a transition to radio.
Yeah.
Now, you know, an argument that people always have about radio is, how do you get your songs on radio, number one? Right? Some will say, yo, you have to know the presenter, you have to know this, you have to know that. Like, I know from personal experience, when I was involved in the music industry from a very young age, and I was doing the whole marketing, etc. The first thing they said to me was, go make friends with every single radio presenter. That's the way you're going to get these artist songs on. And truth be told, that's exactly what happened. You know, I'm young at this time, I'm doing stuff for labels, and I'm having become friends with, you know, various presenters, chatting via MSN regularly to build rapport. And they're like, yo, I've got this track, can you play it? They'll play it. But then there's other artists who, in my opinion, were a lot better. They were getting no radio play. And that's not on just one chapter station, that's across a lot of radio stations. But you kind of went to one of the biggest radio stations. What happened? Because for me, I feel like that was a chapter that kind of, where Stin faded away afterwards. You went from music, which was your peak, which is you absolutely killing it. You got into radio, which you're doing very well. And then you just disappeared. And that was it. I mean, in my eyes, it was like, Stin's now gone. Because when I came across Facebook, I was like, oh yeah, DJ Stin, etc. You know what I mean? But that was the perception. It was the Stin chapter's gone. Like, what happened at radio? And what's the issue with radio? Because why are people always saying that, yo, they can't get their songs playlisted? Like, firstly, what was your role in that radio station?
Right. To start off with, okay, radio I've been doing since 16.
Yeah.
Right. Back in Leicester, there was Sunrise Radio East Midlands when that set up. Yeah. Right. Me and a guy called Pete Shankar, right, used to do Friday night's Bhangra show, right? Again, probably one of the first people to basically interview Jazzy as well, man. You know, and I was blessed with that because I knew and stuff, innit? Right. So when you're into radio, right, is okay, and that was another part of me. So making music was one, right, but being a presenter, right, I've done that. I was on the Asian network, right, even before that time. So even when I was an artist, right, I was doing the mix, right. I was sitting in for some of their main shows. So I had Ray on late nights. I'd done breakfast. I'd done mid-morning shows, right. So you know what, if it was there, I was then at that point. The Asian network, well, that's how you say it, yeah. So at that point, it's like, okay, you know what, going into that radio station, innit, right, I was kind of headhunted, right, because I did in the corporate world, right, I'd been a manager, right, so I've got management skills, yeah. On the music side, I've lived it. I know the scene, right, I know music, I know trends in music, right. So I was kind of headhunted, right, as okay, can you come in and we want you to like basically become a senior producer, right? So cool, right, that's not a problem. It sounds like something that I could do, right? So I went into it. When I went into it, one of the things that was said was, right, okay, because you're now staff, you can't release music. Conflict of interest.
How's it conflict of interest?
Exactly, right? But me just thinking, okay, you know what, listen, this is an opportunity. I can try this, isn't it? Right? This is a real opportunity for me to help the scene. right? Is okay. And at that time, right, is okay, you know what, I was working on for Just Another Stinting, right? I just signed Twin Beats as artists, right? We were working on an album, and we got an MC, right? Is okay, you know what, so like that album was meant to happen.
Got an MC's album.
Got an MC's album.
Okay.
It was going to be produced by Twin Beats, right? Executive produced by myself.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So like we'd recorded all the vocals with Garden, right? And that was ready. So that's sitting there. So at that point, when I'm being told that, okay, you can't work on music, right? You can't release music, right? I've then got to basically just stop and slowly come back with that. So I'd still been working with like Twin Beats, right? As I could getting that album sorted, right? At that point, I'd just be helping them and then pulling off and not being the executive producer on that album, right? Garden was happy with that. Everyone was happy with that, right? But then I can't work on my own stuff. So now that's where, like you said, this is where I'll start to fade. So I'm going from my peak. Yeah, I'm going from basically doing gigs every single weekend, right? Whether it's like Miller, whether it's like just roadshow gigs. I've still got a stack of oneers. Yeah, Scottish oneers, right? From those days, right? That I can go out at weddings and like be abroad a minute. Right? And seriously, all my family's like, again? I'll go here. Right? So I faded, right? No doubt, I faded, right? But what I was able to do is I was able to basically then focus on making sure that the scene was represented. Do you get it? When I joined the BBC, right, that was the time when there was a whole thing in the whole of the music game. I don't call it an industry. Right? It's never been an industry. We haven't got the setup for that. Never been there. It's been a bit of a dissy game. But that's when everyone was withdrawing the rights to play music. Yeah, right, because of royalties.
Yeah.
Right. So I went in at that point, and some of the conversations that I had and some of the relationships that I had with people, right, is actually probably helped in some kind of way to kind of build the bridge back. Because instead of being there's a corporate entity out there, right, and they don't know about music and they're basically doing this, right, now you've got Mark Stripple, Marky Mark, right, Punjabi Hit Squad, head of music, right, and you've got me. Yeah, and you've got like Zab Khan, right, who'd been there for years, knew the scene inside out. So,
side question, sorry, just to interrupt. You weren't allowed to release music.
Yeah.
But Punjabi Hit Squad were.
Punjabi Hit Squad, remember Mark wasn't then at that point part of Punjabi Hit Squad. So Rav and D were just talent. So even as DJ Stin, as a presenter, I could have done what I wanted.
Yeah.
But because I was now Satinder Matthew on staff, that's what, and there's other people in the BBC who've done that, right? And so, you know, that's by the way. Yeah, it's cool, isn't it? It's the end of the day, right? Like I said, everything's a blessing. You learn from it, right? And so at that point, once all that drama had been sorted, what we were looking at is, okay, you know what? How do we represent the scene, right? So playlist meetings, right? So I'd gone from being a senior producer on programming to being the music manager, right? So when I came into being the music manager, that's where we re-looked at it, right? Is okay, you know what does the scene need? And the mainstream, remember we used to start playing mainstream music then, right? We cut back on that, right? We gave the spots back in daytime, right, to UK, right? So what we were trying to do is, okay, you know what, make sure that the scene had something that would represent them, yeah? On playlist meetings, I was
How do they playlist meetings work? And the reason I ask is because there's a lot of artists out there who will say they don't play our music, it doesn't need a playlist in. How do the playlists work? And was there any bias behind it?
Okay, so I'm going to talk from experience.
Yeah,
I'm going to talk
about. You can't talk about now, but
yeah.
for music.
Yeah, what I was responsible for, right? Yeah. Okay, that's where I'm going to come from, innit? Right. So when we had the playlist meeting, what we had is we would call in people from all of the shows. We'd have the music team, so my team would be there.
Yeah.
Right. If Mark was in Birmingham on a Thursday, we used to have it. Then you know what, he'd basically attend as well, and then we would have people who worked at the network on different shows. We'd have them in. Right. Now, why it's important to have that wide, broad bunch of people is because you're going to get different perspectives. And remember, they're the ones that are listening to the audience. Yeah. And the audience are the ones that we need to basically provide a service for. Yeah. So everyone was in there. What we would do is we'd basically, before we'd go into the playlist meeting, you can imagine there's loads of tracks coming out. Right, 30, 40 tracks if you had in a week or whatever that's coming into you. You've then got to strategically look at, right, okay, you know what, which ones are we going to take, right? Because what we're looking at is predominantly when we started was what we're going to put on daytime. What we did afterwards is we built another level into that what we're going to do is we're going to send this music out. If it doesn't hit the playlist first off, we're going to send it out to all of these different shows, and we're going to make sure that, okay, you get some kind of representation, and then, you know what, give you feedback. Because if you've given an artist a chance and people have listened to the radio and they've heard that song and they request that song, or you've got a fan base that basically gets behind it, it's going to give you a platform, right? So in the meeting, we would go through the tracks, right? We'd have a form. Everyone basically then just put down, right, okay, you know what do you think, right? Can this make it to daytime? That's what we were looking at, daytime hours, yeah? You then basically categorize it into A, B, and C, right? So if it's something that you're thinking, you know, definite hit, A, yeah, right, it's okay, this is a class artist, right? They're a big artist, and this song has got the potential to be a hit, right? Give it an A spot. Then you go to B, and then C is okay, you know what, just trying to build it up. And in that meeting as well, so once we've had that meeting, what we'd also do is we'd look at what needs to move up. Yeah. So if there's a track in C and it's like, okay, you know what, this is really growing now, right? Let's put it into B. Right, this is in B. This is really growing. Let's put it into A. Right. So that's how that kind of system worked. That's what we kind of put together, and it was robust in the way that we did it. Right. Beyond that, the things that I want to do is, okay, you know what, editorially, how do we make sure that we kind of give a real focus on artists, right? So for example, when Shindar Baji released Living the Dream, yeah, right, he was like, yeah, album aapne hone tayar kiti hai, right, aapa kuch kariye. And I'm like, Baji, let me listen to the album. And I heard the album, I'm like, you know what, this is going to be an evergreen album, right? So went back, sat down with Dips, who was on the Punjabi show at the time, and then Amit Chana, right? And it's like, okay, look, should we do Shindar Sunday? Both your programs are on a Sunday. Let's do this editorially and let's build something with it, right? So put this concept together that one would be an interview with Shindar going through the album, and the other one would be like, This Is Your Life. Yeah, right? And it worked. Right, live sessions, right, getting people in. One of the biggest Vaisakhi live sessions that we did, right, Chaz Tammi and Aman Hair and Greg Ali, right, and his camp, right. True School and JK were meant to be on that, but they had problems getting down that day, right. So that would have been an epic one if we would have had everyone on there, right. So it was a case of, okay, you know what, when people are coming through, what can we do and how can we build like this editorial, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, right, the network was seen as something which was predominantly Bollywood. But what we were trying to do is uplift UK music and give it a platform, right? One of the things that I did that no one knew about, and I kind of did this like under the radar, right, was, remember how when you used to listen to, when you used to watch EastEnders?
Yeah,
and you used to hear like Jags Climax?
Yeah, really?
Yeah? No, Jags Climax, right? There was someone on that production team, right, that probably loved Jags Climax, right? You know what? And credit to them, innit? And credit to Jags as well, man. Brilliant guy as well, right? But I got in touch with them. I go, listen, right, Zaki, you have Asian music on, right? But it's always the same stuff, right? Let me start sending you stuff. And then I started speaking to artists and saying, okay, you know what? Listen, we've got a link, right, with EastEnders. If you can get your music to me ahead of time, I can get it to them, right? So what you're looking at is a 6-week production cycle for them. Yeah. If you can give it to me a couple of weeks before, I can get it in. So when you're coming out, there's the potential that your tracks can start hitting on EastEnders, right? And they started playing more diverse range of UK music, not Punjabi, UK music,